Bueno, muy buenos días a todas y todos. Buenas tardes a nuestros participantes de Alemania. En nombre de CAMCHAL, Cámara Chileno-Alemana de Comercio e Industria, les quiero dar la bienvenida a nuestro webinar Comunicando prácticas responsables en cadenas de suministro de minerales, estándares de sustentabilidad y soluciones tecnológicas. Desde ya, muchas gracias por conectarse. Before we start, I want to point out that we have an English and Spanish simultaneous translation during this webinar. We will have presentations in both languages, so if you prefer to follow the whole webinar in English or Spanish, I recommend using this translation option. On my screen, you can see the different steps you need to take. It's quite easy. You just have to open the browser in your smartphone or directly in your computer using the URL app.interactio.io. And we just shared the link via the chat as well. Once the website is open, please enter the password MINSUS2020 in capital letters. And lastly, you have to press the play button and mute WebEx. So you can see the transmission in WebEx while listening to the webinar via the application. So I hope it works for all of you, and I will switch into Spanish again. Mi nombre es Denise Kirchner y les voy a acompañar durante esta jornada junto con mi colega Annika Glatz, quien está a cargo del Centro de Negocios Mineros en CAMCHAL y quien va a moderar nuestro panel de discusión más adelante. Annika, ¿estás allí?
Sí, ya estoy acá, Denise. Muchas gracias por presentarme y saludos también a todos los participantes.
Genial. Entonces te vemos más tarde nuevamente.
Perfecto,
Annika y yo,
gracias.
a ti. Annika y yo formamos parte del proyecto Ecomining Concepts. Ecomining Concepts es una red binacional con empresas e instituciones de Chile y Alemania que buscan contribuir a una minería más sustentable. La idea es intercambiar conocimientos y experiencias respecto a tendencias actuales relevantes para el sector minero e impulsar cooperaciones en este ámbito. El proyecto cuenta con el apoyo del Ministerio Federal de Economía y Energía de Alemania, lo que nos permite ejecutarlo desde 2018 ya. Y les invito a visitar nuestra página web ecominingconcepts.cl o escribirnos directamente a nuestros correos si les interesa recibir más información. En el marco de este proyecto también realizamos este webinar de hoy, donde nos enfocaremos por un lado en los estándares de sustentabilidad y la diligencia debida en la cadena de suministro de minerales, para después conocer iniciativas y soluciones tecnológicas por parte de las empresas, tanto en Alemania como en Chile, que buscan dar respuesta a estas exigencias. Y al final tendremos nuestro panel de discusión que ya mencioné con representantes de BMW, la Comisión Chilena de Cobre, Cochico, la Empresa Nacional de Minería, ENAMI y SQM. Por último, quiero agradecer desde ya a todos los participantes de esta jornada y a los colegas del programa MINSUS, la GIZ y el BGR por apoyarnos en la organización y darnos este espacio en su serie de webinars Cadenas de suministro mineras en el contexto post-COVID. ¿Continuará el status quo o habrá un gran reajuste que cerraremos hoy? Muchas gracias también a CEPAL por apoyo técnico y, por supuesto, a nuestros patrocinadores, nuestros pares de cámaras en Perú, Ecuador y Colombia. Pero ahora no quiero perder más tiempo hablando yo. Vamos a comenzar con las presentaciones. Invito a nuestro público a escribir sus preguntas durante las presentaciones en el chat y después de cada presentación vamos a tratar de responder algunas de ellas según cómo vamos con el tiempo. Un aviso importante aquí, en la ventana del chat pueden elegir a quién dirigir sus preguntas. Aquí les pediría que dirijan sus preguntas directamente a mí, Denise Kirchner. Así los puedo juntar todas y pasarlas después a nuestros oradores. Entonces voy a dejar de compartir mi pantalla. Y entonces me gustaría presentar a nuestra primera oradora hoy, Gudrun Franken. Ella es jefa de la Unidad de Minería y Sustentabilidad del Instituto Federal de Geociencias y Recursos Naturales, asesora al gobierno alemán, a la industria y al sector público en cuestiones relacionadas con la minería y la obtención responsable de minerales. Muy bienvenida, Gudrun. Te pido por favor que enciendas ahora tu cámara y tu micrófono y te dejo la palabra.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to talk a bit about current developments.
Sorry to interrupt you. We still cannot see your presentation.
Okay. Just start to share.
Now we can see it. Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks. Sorry for this. Yes, my name is Gudrun Franken. I'm head of the unit Mining and Sustainability at BGR, and I will try to give some insights into current developments on requirements and initiatives to demonstrate responsible mining practice. First of all, the question, of course, is to whom you want to present or demonstrate that you are doing responsible mining, and how do you do it? So first of all, and most importantly, there are market expectations by investors, by supply chain actors, your clients, on reporting, on auditing, on certification, probably, and to demonstrate to what standards do you produce. Secondly, or firstly, of course, there are the legal requirements on the national scale for licensing, for inspections, for reporting, but also legal requirements on an international scale that are trade regulations, for example. And then thirdly, you have community expectations, of course, social license to operate, as it's called, which require stakeholder engagement, CSR measures, protective measures in the communities. So there are different expectations and also different ways to be transparent about the mining practice. Coming to requirements, there are international frameworks that are well known to you, UN guiding principles, UN convention, different guidelines by the OECD or International Labour Organization, which set the frame how to perform best. And from these international requirements, have been developed several industry standards for different sectors, for the mining industry, but also general standards how to implement responsible practice. For example, standards by the Mining Association of Canada, by the International Council on Mining and Metals, Copper Mark, and others. Also, Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. So different initiatives are supporting companies or working together with companies to verify good practice. And on the other hand, you have the regulatory requirements that I mentioned, national laws, but also supply chain due diligence regulation, which have been emerging during the last years, especially well known, probably the EU so-called conflict minerals regulation that will come into effect in next year. And then an EU-wide supply chain due diligence regulation, which covers more sectors than just raw materials, is being planned and for next year, or at least consultation has started to be planned for next year. And then there are several countries that already have national laws like UK, France, Netherlands, or the Swiss law on due diligence that is currently planned. Also in Switzerland, they are proposing to introduce a new trade category for primary gold. So that's easier to distinguish in trade also between primary and secondary gold. For the EU regulation, for example, it has been initiated to introduce obligatory due diligence for the so-called, at that time, conflict minerals, tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold that are produced in Eastern DRC, but also, of course, in other countries. And it's mandatory for European Union importers of these minerals and metals. And BGR is the national authority to check German importers from 2022 on. So we have set up a unit at BGR to do this. So that's just a small example how this really comes into effect and is also checked in supply chains. Several initiatives are addressing a broad range of standards. The issues that are mostly addressed are human rights and workers' rights. As mentioned already, the OECD due diligence guidance, which covers serious human rights abuses, child labor, but also bribery, has become, during the last years, I would say, a baseline for supply chain due diligence standards. But more and more, of course, also in the supply chain, other issues are requested by industry actors, such as, well known to you, probably also the carbon footprint issue, water issues, biodiversity issues. These are major issues that are also required by supply chain actors, not only at national level or in the mining industry. If we come to these different standard schemes and certifications that address the mining level, we see that most of these schemes and initiatives, they cover a broad range of standards, but they also have different detail of standards, different requirements. For example, the IFC standard by the World Bank, which has been drafted or developed for investors mainly, is very detailed, very comprehensive, for example, on occupational health and safety. Another standard, the IRMA standard I've mentioned before, also covers a very broad range, but also detailed requirements. And all these initiatives have also a different focus, a different objective. For example, IRMA, the one major objective is independent verification by a multi-stakeholder team. So this is by multi-stakeholder approach. So this makes it very different from an approach, for example, by ICMM, which is a major initiative to improve performance of mining companies and of the sector in a whole. And Coppermark, for example, is also a standard that's not so detailed, but it goes throughout the whole supply chain and aims at the LME compliance. I will talk later on that. So this is a major reason why these standards have different governance schemes and also different approaches to standards. If we look at the smelter and refiner level, you also have certification schemes for these, and the most known or the only global scheme, I would say, is the scheme of the Responsible Minerals Initiative. And it certifies smelters with respect to the OECD due diligence guidance, meaning human rights and conflict-related issues mainly, all over the world. And all tantalum smelters are part of this program and certified already. Tin smelters, about more than 70, around 80%. And tungsten and gold are also, smelters are also certified, and cobalt is just in development. So you can see this is a program with a global approach. And these smelters, they need to show traceability for their supply chains if they are from conflict-affected and high-risk areas. So you see there are different requirements, especially if you are working in high-risk environments. So the traceability is not only for the responsible smelters a major issue, but in general. And it's been obligatory, as I said, if you source from conflict-affected and high-risk areas, as it is required by the EU regulation. And there are several technologies, and we'll hear later on about these technologies, how to ensure traceability. For example, blockchain technologies to communicate the mineral origin, and also certain sustainability aspects, carbon footprint, for example. And this technology has been also applied from cobalt mines. And especially traceability is an issue if you work in small-scale mining, because it's a very complex environment with many supply chains. So BGR, for example, we are supporting currently an electronic traceability system for gold in DRC, which is supposed to be broadened in its application. We have worked in a pilot project, which worked quite well and had been developed there. So especially in commodities like gold, traceability is a major issue. I mentioned already the LME. The LME, of course, London Metal Exchange, is a very important trading hub and standard setting hub. And they have a standard for 11 commodities that are traded there. And they have a standard which will be implemented from 2 years on until 2026. That the companies listed there, they have ISO certification, they have OHSAS certification, so environmental and safety, operational health and safety issues certified. And also as a basic standard that they are compliant with the OECD due diligence guidance. So this is, again, another level where the standard is set obligatory, and for many other commodities than the so-called conflict minerals. So we see the broadening of these requirements. The LME now has a proposal also to establish a low-carbon aluminium trading platform, but that's controversially debated. So we'll see how far sustainability standards will be set by exchanges or rather than by supply chain actors or other initiatives. And again, another global level is independent global transparency approaches, which also have been emerging during the last years, because stakeholders are interested to have independent information. One is the Global Tailings Review, for example, that's been started by ICMM, UNEP, and Principle for Responsible Investors. So they have developed a global industry standard on tailings management, and a portal has been launched this year where you can find information on more than 100 mining companies, also many of them from Latin America, and more than 1,800 tailings storage facilities. And it's planned also to test remote satellite monitoring of these facilities. And here we see again new technologies being introduced to have external monitoring of sustainability performance. Another initiative is the Responsible Mining Foundation, which does a regular sustainability assessment of companies and also of mine sites increasingly during the last years. And we also expect these monitoring and analyzing of mining companies' reports and information to continue, not only for such international initiatives, but of course, investors are a lot using this already. So as a summary, I would say reporting and also independent verification of responsible practice is becoming increasingly important for investors especially, and also for the downstream value chain, and also for trading commodities. There are a lot of regulations coming up. And voluntary initiatives can help companies, can support demonstrating compliance to these standards. However, several schemes are operating, some of them competing, but we see continuous development of these schemes. And fourth, and importantly, new technologies will be increasingly used to collect and communicate data, information. But there's always a challenge. What's the quality of the input data and which information is really valuable and to be communicated? So that's from my side. Thanks a lot, and I'm open to any questions.
Muchas gracias, Gudrun, por la interesante presentación y este panorama sobre los requisitos y los estándares de sustentabilidad que nos dará el marco también para las siguientes presentaciones y nuestra charla. Antes de avanzar con el próximo orador, tengo una pregunta para ti. Tal como mencionaste, no existe hoy día un estándar en lo que se refiere a la cadena de suministro de cobre. La pregunta es, considerando también la relevancia que tiene el cobre para Chile, ¿qué recomendarías a las empresas mineras, por ejemplo? ¿Tiene sentido ya avanzar en estos temas o sería mejor esperar a que salga, por ejemplo, el estándar de Coppermark?
Okay, thanks a lot for those questions. As you said, there is no standard for the copper supply chain. Of course, there are a lot of standards for the mine site, for the certification of mine sites. I would say it really depends whether what your clients are up to and what are the requirements of your clients, of the supply chain. Of course, the LME standard is very relevant, and the Coppermark is working together with LME on this. So I would assume that, of course, you should look closely into the issue of the Coppermark standard. On the other hand, there are other standards which I'm very sure will also apply to being acknowledged then by the LME, because they are at least addressing the same standards as, for example, Coppermark or even other more standards. So I would not say that there's only one standard to look for, but as it's developing, so it's all under development. So I can only say that you can probably get ready to report to the standards are very similar, so it's mostly a question to which how the reporting is done, and so yeah.
Perfecto.
I hope that explains a bit.
Yes, sí, muchas gracias. Estoy revisando, creo que por ahora no tenemos más preguntas, entonces muchas gracias, Gudrun, y diría que pasamos directamente a la próxima presentación. A continuación queremos presentar algunas soluciones tecnológicas y primero echamos una mirada a Alemania y quiero dar la bienvenida a Klaus Wiesen, cofundador de la startup Sustainable. Sustainable es una plataforma basada en la nube que permite a las empresas descubrir la cadena de suministro, colaborar con proveedores, monitorear y evaluar todos los aspectos relevantes de sustentabilidad. Entonces, Klaus, por favor, la palabra es tuya.
Yes, thank you very much, Denise. I hope everyone can hear me and see my screen.
Yes, perfect.
Great. So thank you also very much to Gudrun, because this was a perfect introduction. I'm Klaus Wiesen. I'm CEO of our startup company Sustainable. As you've heard, there are lots of requirements outside for companies, also lots of standards who have to be met. And we enable the companies looking from, the point of sale into the supply chain to really proactively manage sustainability, to find out where their raw materials come from. That every actor in the supply chain at the end of the day benefits. If one actor in the upstream supply chain gets more sustainable, all other actors also get to know this information and can also benefit from it. Just a few words, on our history. So we are a bit more than 3 years old now. I personally have a background in sustainability assessment. I've been working with a leading sustainability think tank here in Germany before founding the startup. And we work across different industries. This is also really important because supply chains, they are not linear. So if you look from the point of sale, a product, of course, can be very diverse. It can contain mineral raw materials, but it can also contain organic raw materials. So you have to cover different industries, and we are particularly active in the retail sector, food, but also in textile and, of course, in automotive. So Volkswagen also uses our platform to increase supply chain transparency of their supply chains. Just a bit more in regard to the background. So if you look from a retailer or from an OEM company, the major share of sustainability risks and sustainability impacts comes from the supply chain. So if those companies want to become truly sustainable, they really need to address their supply chain. And as you may also experience, so there's currently, starting last year, but particularly this year now, a huge pressure for companies to get more sustainable. So in the EU, we have the upcoming CO2 price. Then, of course, we have also lots of regulations. For instance, in Germany here, we have a supply chain law, which is announced. So this puts a lot of pressure on the companies. The big, large corporations in Europe and Germany, they understood that either they become sustainable, they sell sustainable products, or they will disappear from the market on the long term. So it's not a trend what we are talking about here. It's really, really strong movement which will not stop in a couple of years. So facing this, you can imagine that companies really need to know their supply chains. Currently, more than a third of CEOs also says that supply chain is the biggest reputational threat. So not also only from the pure management perspective, but also from the external perspective, it's a really essential topic. But the core problem, of course, is that they lack visibility into the supply chain. So imagine also that a mine becomes more sustainable, that a mine implements benefits. The OEM using the material which was once, which comes from the mine, which was once mined there, they don't know about this. So we need to link this. So we need to give incentives to the mines, to all actors in the supply chain to become more sustainable by making it possible that their customers, and not only their direct customers, but particularly the customers at the end of the supply chain towards the final consumer, that they get aware of this and they also then see the benefit, of course. So it actually, you have to see it from both sides, providing benefits to the very beginning of the supply chain, but also to the very end of the supply chain, so that at the end of the day, every stakeholder benefits. So facing this, we developed a cloud platform. So a technology you can just use via each web browser, and it allows retailers, OEMs to monitor their supply chain sustainability. And the first step to get there is to create transparency, to increase visibility into the supply chain, means collaborating with the suppliers to get to know their suppliers down to the source of raw materials. And when we talk about sustainability, we address diverse topics, but of course, one of the main drivers is carbon emissions, CO2, as mentioned. The topic of climate change is also linked to, not only linked to mitigation, so reducing the CO2 emissions, but also to adaptation, so how to adapt to climate change. So we're also addressing this, for instance, showing that a particular region maybe has a high water stress. So if there's a process going on which needs lots of water, that's something you need to have an eye on. That's a possible risk, but of course then also addressing social risks such as bad working conditions. So covering actually all topics around it. And the platform provides services. Let's start with the buyers. So for the OEMs, or maybe also for the producers at the end so of the supply chain towards the consumer who wants to analyze the supply chain, so they can really identify the sub-suppliers and can trace the materials step by step, tier by tier up the supply chain. Our platform visualizes the network, so you can really understand the supply chain and understand which raw material comes from which supplier or sub-supplier, and how it impacts your product at the end of the day. You can then, based on this network, continuously collect sustainability data, and you can report on the related risks, but also really assess the sustainability, for instance, the carbon footprint of your material sourced. And on the other hand, for suppliers, they get invited from their OEMs or from their direct customers to join the platform. They can register for free, and they have a data space where they can easily provide the information needed, the documents, also the KPIs for their sustainability profile. They can easily answer customer requests sent from direct customers or indirect customers who want to increase the transparency, increase the visibility. They always keep control of their data, meaning they exactly see with whom in the supply chain they share the data. And they also can forward requests to their suppliers to invite them to the platform, linking them to the supply chain, so that they can share also their sustainability information. So these are the two perspectives in the supply chain and how actors can communicate with each other. Let's take a look of a bit more detailed into how the supply chain network, this digital network, is built up by our platform. Let's take the OEM as example. There may be automotive manufacturer. He invites his direct suppliers to join Sustainable, to register in the platform. And those direct suppliers, they then invite their suppliers to register and share information. And the tier 2 suppliers, so the indirect suppliers, can then decide whether they want to share only information with their direct customer, the tier 1 suppliers here, or also with the brand, with the manufacturer at the end of the supply chain. So keeping full of control of the data. And we have also different levels of transparency. So every facility can then decide in which extent they want to share data. So you might only share your region where you're located. You can also share, of course, all criteria such as CO2 emissions, social certificates, your specific location, the processes you conduct. But you're a bit flexible to do so. We often communicate specific requirements for a big brand into the supply chain. Sometimes the requirement is full transparency. Sometimes this requirement is only to indicate sub-suppliers with high risks. So this is quite different, but the technology itself, it's flexible to address different needs and different levels here. So here just some impressions, some screenshots from our platform. So we have a network visualization as mentioned, so that you can really understand the supply chain from the perspective of each material, of each product you source. And in the best case, of course, down to the mine. So also seeing the mines involved and which sustainability performance they have. We also can show this network on a geographical map, so seeing really the locations of the facilities involved in the supply chain, and of course also the trade relationships between them. We also provide heat maps which then underlie potential risks based on country or regional level. You can then also access the profile of each facility, and depending on the settings on the permissions of this facility, then see the data shared with you. And then finally, we also provide surveys. So every actor in the supply chain can flexibly launch surveys if they want to know additional information. Think of regular data collection, but also that there's some incident. There may be some accident, scandal, whatever in Brazil or in some other countries, and you want to know which part of your supply chain might be affected, then you can launch a survey and request data from the facility in scope. Yeah, so this was it from my side, just a very short introduction. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm looking forward for your questions.
Perfect. Muchas gracias, Klaus. De verdad, muy interesante la plataforma que desarrollaron. Justo me llegó una pregunta en el chat. La pregunta sería, ¿tiene la impresión de que los requisitos que son cada vez más, son solo una carga para los interesados en la cadena de suministro, o que también lo ven como una oportunidad para hacer que los procesos sean más eficaces?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't make it to switch to the app. Maybe you just could repeat in English.
Yes, no problem. The question is, do you have the impression that the increasing requirements are only a burden to stakeholders, or that they also see it as a chance to make processes more effective?
That's a very good question. I think they also see it as a chance. So we recognized it, and this is this change. I was speaking of that 2-3 years ago. It was really more like a pain, but I think now companies know that they need to get sustainable. Also, the suppliers know it. Often they lack the know-how, the resources to do so, but enabling collaboration, I think they also understand that they can benefit from it. Often the huge brands, they have not the policy to just cut out the suppliers of their supply chain if they do not meet the requirements, but also help them to become cleaner, to become better. This is one aspect. The other one is that so those who are already a bit more sustainable, who have put effort into becoming more sustainable, they of course also want to communicate it towards the customer, towards the brand. So I think more and more, at least, it's not seen as the burden, but also as a chance. Yeah.
Super. Gracias, Klaus Wiesen. Espero que sigan teniendo mucho éxito con Sustainable, sobre todo en esos tiempos un poco difíciles que estamos viviendo con la pandemia del COVID. Entonces, pasamos a Chile y me gustaría introducir a nuestro próximo orador, Patricio Rojas, CEO y cofundador de Data Mining Solutions, que se incorporó recientemente a nuestra red EcoMining Concepts. Hola, Patricio, ¿estás allí?
Hola, sí, aquí estoy.
Perfecto. Ya, genial. Entonces la palabra es tuya. Sí, te vemos y te escuchamos perfecto.
Buenísimo. Quiero ver si puedo compartir la pantalla. Un segundo.
¿Te aparece el botoncito?
No me aparece deshabilitado.
Está habilitado Patricio Rojas con el rol de presentador. Share context o file.
No, sorry.
Si no, pasamos quizás a nuestro backup para que si te parece, Patricio, lo compartimos nosotros.
Ok, no, te lo envío de nuevo. Son unos pequeños cambios.
Annika, si quieres, quizás podrías compartir la pantalla con la presentación de Patricio.
Prefiero compartir esta.
Maybe in order to so that we can advance more quickly, Stefan from SQM, would you want to maybe do your presentation now, and then Patricio can send us his last version of the presentation so that we can share it?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
No problem, but my sharing button is also disabled currently.
Yes, you will be assigned the host function in the
Right
Okay.
now, yes. We will assign you this function. Luis, ¿puedes pasar, por favor, la presentación a Stefan?
¿A Estefan?
Sí.
Un segundo. Estefan va a quedar con rol de presentador. Ahora sí.
¿Puedes compartir la pantalla, Stefan?
Sí,
Estefan,
ahí sí.
Perfecto. Bueno, entonces pasamos a la presentación de Stefan de Bruyn, espero que pronuncie bien tu nombre, director de desarrollo de negocios de SQM, que nos presentará el portal de transparencia de SQM, ofreciendo un medio de verificación respecto del cumplimiento de sus obligaciones de extracción en el Salar de Atacama. Entonces, Stefan, te paso la palabra, ya estamos viendo tu presentación y adelante.
Muchas gracias, Denise. I will do the presentation in English. I would like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to speak in this webinar, and very happy to show you this new platform that we have created 1 month ago. So SQM is a listed company, so in case you would like to invest in SQM shares, please read this statement first. So I'll start with a very quick introduction of SQM. So SQM is a Chilean company. We are listed both in the Santiago and in the New York Stock Exchange. I will not go into details on this slide, but I just want to highlight that even though lithium is getting a lot of attention, SQM is much more than just lithium. We're also the market leader in the global market leader for the production of iodine, as well as sodium and potassium nitrate. Where do these products come from? So we have 2 strategic resources in the north of Chile, which we exploit. One is called caliche ore. From this ore, we are extracting sodium nitrate and iodine. The second resource is Salar de Atacama, where we are obtaining lithium chloride and potassium chloride from the underground brine present there. We have a third resource, which is in Australia. This is a spodumene project, so a hard rock lithium mine, where we will decide at the beginning of next year what will be the investment there. But just to highlight that this is a project for 45,000 tons of lithium hydroxide, most likely. Maybe for the reference of the attendees, we have a current capacity in Salar de Atacama of 70,000 tons of lithium carbonate equivalent. And this is relevant to a total market of lithium carbonate equivalent lithium chemicals of just over 300,000 tons. We have more than 50 years of experience operating in the north of Chile and more than 20 years of experience exploiting lithium. Maybe interesting also for the audience is that today, according to the analysis of the European Union, around 80% of the lithium chemicals that are imported into the EU today are coming from Chile. So what do we do with this product? So I would like to highlight your attention to our logo and our slogan. So SQM wants to be a company providing solutions for human progress. So I'll just highlight 3 applications. There is many more interesting applications, but that would fall out of the scope of this meeting. So one of the main products that SQM produces is potassium nitrate. So we combine sodium nitrate from caliche with potassium chloride from the brine. And potassium nitrate is really one of the best specialty plant nutrients available today in the world. And it's particularly used in drip irrigation systems, so in greenhouses, or as you can see in the picture on the left, in vertical farming applications. And the reason potassium nitrate is so good is because it is water soluble, it is chlorine free, and you can really tailor the nutrients to the crop, and with that achieve a very high quality of produce. And at the same time, you reduce water use, and in vertical farming specifically, you additionally reduce your land footprint as well. Another application, which is one of the key solutions to solve the intermittency of renewable energies, is called thermal solar salts. So these salts is a mixture of sodium and potassium nitrate. And you can see in the picture in the middle, in the huge storage tanks at the base of the central tower, people load sodium and potassium nitrate, you melt them, and you form in this way a eutectic mixture. And eutectic mixture means that this is a mixture that can retain heat very well. So what you do during the day, the rays of the sun are concentrated by mirrors on the central tower, and then the heat can be used directly to drive a turbine to generate electricity. But you can perfectly use the excess heat to warm up the salts, and then when the sun sets, you can continue generating electricity. And this system is already in operation today. There is a huge CSP plant that will be launched at the end of this year, so as we speak almost, which is called Cerro Dominador in the north of Chile. But you could perfectly imagine this solution also being combined with a huge wind turbine field, and they're solving the lack of wind at certain instances to generate more stable electricity. The third application, which of course is drawing the most attention, but I put on purpose the smallest photo, is of course electromobility. Now, why is electromobility so important? When I joined SQM in 2005, I became responsible of our sales in Asia Pacific. And so this is a picture of Beijing. On the left, you see Beijing on a beautiful day, magnificent city. But I have also seen Beijing, which was kind of like a hell on earth when you have this extreme smog and you cannot breathe. It's really unacceptable that we put people living in cities through this kind of conditions. So we really have to do something about this. So that brings me to sustainability. I have this first slide is to explain to you how we see sustainability. So it's really a circular process. So you start by defining your goals. What is your strategic ambition? We are aligned with the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We are a member of the UN Global Compact. So we know where we want to go and what we want to do. We are also a member of the Global Battery Alliance. This is an initiative which is working on making the automotive battery value chain more sustainable by way of more transparency or traceability. And so those are your goals, but of course you have to start somewhere. So you have to report where you are and what you are emitting, what is your footprint. So SQM has, and we are publishing this already since 2010, a very extensive sustainability report. And we report in this report also since 2010, according to GRI. This is the Global Reporting Initiative, which guarantees that when companies disclose data, those data can be compared with other companies. So this is very important because otherwise you could try to manage the numbers. We don't do this. So we report according to this standard, which all companies that follow the GRI apply, which makes it able that results can be compared. So what we have done additional in the first half of this year, we have undergone an extensive sustainability audit of all our operations. with the specialists of McKinsey to benchmark where we are, to identify opportunities where we can improve, and to basically evaluate all our decision-making systems in the whole company to include KPI on sustainability, so that we don't make an investment decision purely on financial metrics, but we incorporate also environmental sustainability metrics. So it's very much about standards. There is many standards, and we are very actively working on incorporating more standards. I cannot comment more to you about that at this point, but this will be announced in a matter of months. There is another very important pillar of our sustainability approach, and this is called life cycle assessment. So life cycle assessment is a very detailed analysis of your complete footprint. So not only what you do, but also what your suppliers do, what your energy adds as footprint, what your imported materials do. So we have already done one life cycle assessment for lithium. We are a leader in this sense. I think of all the major lithium producers in the world, we are the only one that is has made this public. So our footprint is now clear for everybody to see. And what is really fantastic about carbon footprint is that, about life cycle assessment, excuse me, is that it shows you exactly where is your footprint and where you need to act. So it's a tool to focus your efforts. And just to give you one very concrete example, in the production of lithium carbonate, so we start from lithium chloride, which you combine with soda ash. This is sodium carbonate, and this is an important raw material which SQM uses. And so, to our great surprise, 3/4 of our carbon footprint, cradle to gate, is coming from soda ash. So we want to improve our carbon footprint. We now know where to go to make this improvement. Highlight that this LCA was assessed critically by the Öko Institute in Germany. And we are now in the final stages of our second LCA, second life cycle assessment. This is a more extensive life cycle assessment in cooperation with Argon. And what this allows us to do is to see the impact of lithium footprint down to cell level. So we are comparing the different production routes of lithium from brine, as SQM is currently using, but also the hard rock route. So this is typically Australian mineral being converted in China to lithium chemicals. So we are comparing both routes, and we're seeing the impact down to the cell level, and you really see that there is a significant impact. So this is really interesting information, and so that is being fed into the GRID model from Argon, which is a wide use tool to evaluate footprint of battery materials and batteries, and so that is a very interesting exercise also to do. And so, based on this whole process and on our extensive work with McKinsey on sustainability, we have made public 2 weeks ago our Sustainable Development Plan with a very holistic set of goals. So we want to reduce our water use in all our operations in the north of Chile, but also specifically in Salar de Atacama. We will reduce our brine extraction by 20% starting immediately, and our goal is to reach 50% by 2030. We will be carbon neutral by 2030 in lithium, potassium chloride, and iodine, and in all our products by 2040. We believe this is very important. This is a voluntary initiative which aligns us fully with all the requests of the stakeholders of this value chain, and specifically of the OEMs, of course, who are doing tremendous efforts also in this aspect. This is not all of it, so we are also going to further increase our dialogue with our local communities, who are very important. And sorry for this. And reduce weight, improve monitoring even further. And this brings me to the next slide. So our transparency portal, which is available in sqmsenlinea.com, it's really, we call it the online portal 2.0, because this portal was already existing. It was in a much more simple form, but it was already existing before. But what we have done now is really upgraded the portal to be up to date with technology and internet tools available today. And so there is two objectives here. One is to explain what we are doing and where we are operating. And the second objective is to make transparent the impact of our operation to all stakeholders in our value chain. So in this first picture, you can see the Salar de Atacama Basin, and you can see that it is surrounded by two mountain ranges. So on the west, you can see the Cordillera de Domeyko, and on the west, you see the Andes mountain range. And so in between these two mountains, there is this closed off basin, which has over probably hundreds of thousands of years accumulated the leached minerals coming down from those mountains. So they are being leached by water, and they accumulated underground here. And in that sense, they have formed a kind of a mineral treasure. And how is this treasure? So over time, the concentration of these minerals, which are in the form of salts, because of the high evaporation and the dry environment, this concentration of mineral became so high that this basin got closed off by a thick salt crust. So you can drive trucks and cars over this, no problem. It's very, very solid. And underneath this crust, there is brine. Now, what is brine? Brine is basically a hypersaline solution. What does this mean? Brine contains around 300,000 milligram per liter of total dissolved salts. And for comparison, this is more than 7 to 8 times
Stefan, me parece que se cortó la conexión. ¿Hola? Stefan desapareció.
Estefan, podemos cerrar el video para que tengas todo el modo de internet solamente en el audio. Cierra el video, por favor.
Stefan, ¿has escuchado? Sí. Porque ahora no te escuchábamos más. Igual, también te aviso, esperando que me escuches, que sería bueno si dentro de 2, 3 minutos podrías acabar la presentación, que estamos un poco apurados con el tiempo. Genial. Entonces, sigue nomás. ¿No te escuchamos igual? No sé qué pasó, porque antes te escuchamos súper bien, pero de repente no escuchamos nada. No sé si tú nos escuchas. Annika, ¿qué opinas tú? Si seguimos con Patricio y vamos a ver si podemos volver la conexión con Stefan para el panel de discusión, o esperamos un ratito para ver si se puede volver a conectar.
Yo opino que podríamos, dado que Stefan después está en el panel de discusión, podríamos darle ahí un par de minutos para contarnos sobre el portal de transparencia. Y ahora intentar con Patricio, esperando que ahora sí funciona.
Sí, perfecto. Igual ahora tenemos a ti como backup, tú ya tienes la presentación. Entonces, sí, lo vamos a hacer así. Entonces, espero, Stefan, como no te escuchamos, no te podemos preguntar por tu opinión, pero esperamos que te parezca bien que lo hacemos así. Entonces, ahora sí, Patricio, vamos a comenzar con tu presentación. La última presentación antes de nuestro panel de discusión. No sé si ahora tienes el acceso para compartir la pantalla, si no lo hace Annika, pero fíjate si puedes hacerlo tú.
No, no lo tengo. Ahí sí, sí, ahí está. Ahora sí. Muy bien.
A ver, sí, genial. Entonces, la palabra es tuya. Patricio.
Perfecto. Hello, everybody. Sorry about the issue. I'm to German and English speakers, but I'm going to do it in Spanish, en español. Anyway, the PowerPoint is in English for you people. Bien. Yo soy CEO de Antara Mining, una empresa nacida en Antofagasta el año 2012 y que se dedica a construir software para una minería mucho más eficiente, más productiva y sustentable a la vez. Somos hoy partner de Eco-Mining Concepts, muy recientemente, de Microsoft, de SAP, de Zebra y de Intersystems. Y estamos también en Endeavor, yo soy emprendedor en Endeavor, junto con mi socio Alfredo, desde el 2012 también. ¿Quiénes están detrás de nosotros? Bueno, la gente más importante para nosotros es nuestro equipo. Son realmente brutales y son quienes hacen que las cosas pasen en Antara, ¿no? Bueno, trazabilidad para una minería responsable no es solo cumplir con un estándar o con las medidas y los KPI que nos imponen nuestros o los mandantes, que son los clientes de la minería, sino también cumplir con todo el impacto de trazabilidad en lo que tiene que ver con sustentabilidad de la gente, de las personas, los trabajadores, las comunidades y también el medio ambiente. ¿Qué es lo que es minería verde? Es una minería que no provoca ningún impacto negativo ni al medio ambiente ni a las personas. En el fondo es un compromiso entre las comunidades, los trabajadores, las compañías, todos los stakeholders que participan en esta producción responsable. Principalmente eficiencia en el uso de los materiales, el agua y la energía, disponibilidad también de esos materiales para el futuro, optimización del trabajo y las prácticas organizacionales, la eficiencia y tecnologías muy amigables con el medio ambiente, fíjese que se repite la palabra tecnología, y además un uso de la tierra sustentable para una explotación futura, ¿no? Interesante número, 28 millones de toneladas se consumen hoy, se cree que podemos llegar a 50 millones de toneladas de cobre con toda la gran demanda que tiene el mundo, en el mundo el cobre por la electromovilidad y también por las energías eléctricas, ¿no? Esta foto no la queremos ver más. Esta foto tiene que ver con niños haciendo minería, principalmente en el Congo, porque se produce en muchos otros países. Y por este tipo de cosas, BMW, que hoy participa de este webinar, dejó de comprar cobalto a la República Democrática del Congo y partió a comprar Australia y a Marruecos. Esto es un impacto gigantesco, es una nota y es un cuidado a los productores globales, no solo de cobre, sino que de minerales, ¿no? En este caso fue cobalto. Esta es otra nota importante. La LME, la London Metal Exchange, decidió que para el 2025 no va a transar metales que no puedan certificar su fuente responsable de producción. Entonces, bueno, a partir de algunos años, por suerte está ocurriendo todo esto, a partir de hace algunos años empiezan a aparecer algunas certificaciones, algunas iniciativas respecto a una minería responsable, una minería mucho más sustentable, y se van sumando entonces industrias como la del oro, como la del aluminio, la del carbón, cobalto, acero y hoy también el cobre. El cobre nace desde el RMI, que son una iniciativa para minería responsable, en la cual se basa el Copper Mark. Copper Mark viene de la ICA, la International Copper Association, y lo que viene a hacer es también avanzar hacia una minería, en este caso del cobre, que cumpla con estos estándares. Y el Copper Mark también está basado en los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible de la ONU, particularmente el número 12, que tiene que ver con la producción y el consumo responsable. La buena noticia fue que rápidamente se empezaron a acercar empresas mineras para poder certificar y empezar este proceso de un año aproximadamente de cumplir con esta certificación. La primera que se certificó fue Kennecott en Estados Unidos. Realmente es un tremendo impacto. Ahí estuvo Río Tinto presente. Como también estuvimos presentes en Antara para trabajar en la agenda de digitalización de la minería. Es el roadmap de cómo o qué debe hacer y cuándo lo debe hacer la minería respecto a la adopción de tecnologías o de lo que es lo digital, del industria 4.0. Muy importante que en ese roadmap en el que trabajamos 4 meses, varias empresas mineras, universidades, el gobierno y otras entidades, fue que uno de los 3 núcleos traccionantes es el de la minería verde. Eso es muy, muy importante porque marca un futuro, marca un camino en este sentido. Y además quedó demostrado con estas iniciativas dentro del núcleo traccionante de minería verde que la tecnología tiene mucho que decir. O sea, es pieza fundamental, si no la piedra angular de lo que tiene que ver con la minería responsable. Y en este sentido, bueno, la robótica y el IoT, como sabemos, puede aportar, evitando, por ejemplo, que los seres humanos participen en actividades peligrosas. La aplicación de gemelos digitales, que permite también evaluar no solo temas de negocio financiero, sino que además riesgos medioambientales, por ejemplo, o el cloud computing con soluciones como las nuestras que estamos desarrollando para promover la economía circular, por un lado, promover la minería verde y responsable, también la inteligencia artificial y también los centros de manejo remoto de estas minas, estos centros que están en la ciudad y que permiten operar a distancia las faenas mineras, ¿no? Evitando también los traslados y la emisión de CO2 del personal. Bueno, todo esto tiene que ver con una gran oportunidad y una gran oportunidad en el caso del cobre para Chile y Perú. Este clúster minero gigantesco que tenemos, que entre ambos países están bordeando casi la mitad, el 50% de la producción de cobre mundial. Es el clúster minero más grande del mundo, de hecho. La oportunidad es gigantesca. Solo un ejemplo, y que se da bastante, si viene escuchando nuevamente por suerte, es que un auto convencional hoy día utiliza entre 8 y 22 kilos de cobre, un auto híbrido 38 kilos de cobre, pero un auto eléctrico utiliza 4 veces más. Y de hecho un auto Tesla puede llegar a utilizar 10 veces más cobre que un vehículo convencional hoy, eso que ya conocen ustedes. Entonces, ya en eso hay una tremenda oportunidad. La energía renovable, como la energía eólica o la energía solar, por ejemplo, la mareomotriz, utiliza una gran cantidad de cobre también. 5 veces más cobre que la energía convencional. ¿Y eso qué significa? Al final, todo esto y esta alta demanda por el cobre a nivel mundial que está ocurriendo, significa mucho mayor Producto Interno Bruto para los países y además una gran cantidad de empleo también. Es por eso que fuimos invitados por Codelco el año 2018 a participar con nuestra tecnología en una iniciativa que tomó con BMW para poder desarrollar un prototipo que presente, que muestre y despliegue cómo o visibiliza cómo se está comportando la mina respecto de esta minería verde, del compromiso de esta certificación en el cumplimiento de estos KPI en varias dimensiones que tienen que ver con la emisión de CO2, el consumo de agua, la seguridad de los trabajadores, el impacto de las comunidades, etc. Y bueno, de ahí decidimos entrar con nuestro principal producto que tiene que ver con la administración de los activos críticos. Ese producto se llama Antara MP, Mining Product, y desarrollamos ese prototipo junto con Codelco, nos tardamos un año aproximadamente, pero ahí nos metimos bastante en el tema, y tiene que ver también no solo con todo lo que es el producto, sino también con los supplies, los insumos críticos, por ejemplo, ácido, combustible, agua y otros. Y dotar de trazabilidad completa, es saber cómo se produjo y cuánto impactó en cada una de las etapas productivas, no solo productivas, sino también de despacho y entrega. Algunas características de nuestra plataforma, principalmente es un sistema de gestión de inventario, con trazabilidad durante todo el proceso, control de calidad, tareas logísticas, trazabilidad del transporte, sea en tren, sea en camión, integramos electrónicamente a laboratorios, puertos, a todos los transportes, agentes de aduana, y administramos también toda la gestión documental, fotografías y documentos como certificados y otros. Bien, entonces con Codelco desarrollamos este primer prototipo que tiene que ver con una plataforma que permita no solo disponer de la información de trazabilidad productiva y de operación de estos productos e insumos, sino también con toda la huella o el impacto que tienen estos con el medio ambiente y con con la gente, ¿no? Trabajadores y comunidades. Se definió trabajar en 8 dimensiones, principalmente basadas en el Comermark, y que son esas que están ahí, que son como las más relevantes. Y además, como participamos de esto y realmente esto fue un cambio de foco para nosotros, desarrollamos una nueva plataforma que tiene que ver con la trazabilidad de los assets, que son los reparables que van a las distintas tareas de mantenimiento. Y con eso evitamos que se pierdan componentes y que no puedan ser reutilizados, es decir, fundidos y convertidos nuevamente en componentes, y así aportamos a la economía circular tan importante que es en la minería hoy. Algunas dificultades para toda esta explosión, digamos, que tiene que ver con la tecnología dentro de la minería verde. El bajo desarrollo de nuevas tecnologías que permita eficientar los procesos. Ese bajo desarrollo, hay muy poco desarrollo de empresas de base tecnológica que estén aportando hoy a la minería. Y además, y ese bajo desarrollo también responde a que hay poca inversión. Nosotros sabemos que estamos en el límite bajo o inferior de la OCDE en temas de inversión del Producto Interno Bruto en I+D, ¿no? Entonces, tenemos que levantar esos indicadores para apoyar la generación de empresas y a la vez de innovaciones en la materia. Muy pocos fondos de inversión realmente de riesgo también en Chile. En Chile se ven muchas venture capital o muchos family offices poniendo en dinero, pero no es realmente de riesgo. Los principales fondos de riesgo están fuera del país y gracias a Endeavor hoy, por ejemplo, estamos contando con algunos que se están viniendo y están viendo cosas interesantes y ya han aparecido, ustedes saben, como otros que han ido apareciendo, que han tenido que salir, como Corner Shop y Notco y otros en otra industria. Y además el alto punto de inversión que requieren estas nuevas tecnologías, incorporarlas, es caro. Pero yo diría que una de las principales dificultades para poder implementar innovación que permita ser más eficiente y más ecológico, más responsable ambiental y socialmente, tiene que ver con la cultura y con la gente. Hoy es muy, muy difícil poder implementar soluciones, poder convencer para probar. Por eso se agradece lo que está haciendo Sistemen con el centro de pilotaje, pero es muy poco, es insuficiente hoy. Las mineras se tienen que abrir a sus procesos de captura de innovación. Bien lo que está haciendo Expande también con su área de innovación abierta, ¿no? Que permite recibir desafíos y postular a emprendedores innovadores a estos desafíos mineros de varias compañías ya hoy en Chile. Esto es interesante. Quienes están demandando que haya minería responsable, minería verde, son principalmente quienes compran los minerales, el producto minero, ¿no? Él es Octavio Araneda, es el presidente ejecutivo de Codelco, y lo que dice es real. Es mucha inversión la que hay que hacer para poder tener una minería realmente, en el corto plazo, realmente sostenible. Pero, ¿por qué invertir? Primero, trabajadores más seguros y con una mejor calidad de vida, comunidades más soportadas, más felices, ¿no? Con mayor inversión, con más escuelas, con más educación, oportunidades, incorporación también. Un negocio mucho más eficiente, pero no solo eso, sino que permanece en el mercado. O sea, a partir del 2025 va a poder seguir vendiendo su producto. Y yo diría lo más importante de todo esto tiene que ver con que tenemos un solo planeta. Entonces, ¿por qué invertir por lo mismo? Porque no hay otro, o sea, no nos vamos a poder cambiar en el corto plazo. Tenemos que cuidar lo que estamos, de lo que somos responsables, ¿no? Entonces, todo lo que tiene que ver con cierre de faenas mineras, con la emisión, con relaves, sobre todo relaves, que hoy está apareciendo bastante. Hay que estar ahí, hay que trabajar en eso. Bien, eso fue mi presentación. Muchas gracias y estoy atento a lo que quieran comentar.
No, muchísimas gracias a ti, Patricio, por presentarnos esta solución de Antara Mining Solutions. Te espero que me pidas disculpas si quizás en esta ocasión pasamos las preguntas y pasamos directamente al panel de discusión, porque estamos muy justos con el tiempo, pero yo tengo las preguntas en el chat y te sugiero que quizás después lo podemos quizás responder por correo, si de ahí queda algo pendiente, si te parece.
Perfecto,
¿Sí?
muchísimas gracias.
Disculpa, no, muchas gracias a ti. Y entonces pasamos directamente a nuestro panel de discusión y Annika, te paso la palabra a ti.
Perfecto, muchas gracias, Denise. I will switch to English right now. We agreed with all the panelists to do the panel in English because it's the common denominator that we all had language-wise. And first of all, thank you, Denise, for guiding us through this webinar so far. And also big thank you to everyone who presented and shared their valuable thoughts about this interesting topic with us. For those who don't know me, my name is Annika Glatz. I'm also working at Kamchal. And together with Denise and two other colleagues, I'm in charge of the eco-mining concepts, which is a project that also addresses the topic of sustainability standards and how they can be implemented, and also how Germany and Latin American countries are strategic partners in that important step. I agreed with the panelists behind the scenes that in time-wise, we will skip a little bit the introductory part. I hope that is okay. We also have the CVs of all our panelists on the webpage of the webinar. But just to know who is virtually sitting on the table, I will quickly present you Claudia Becker, Senior Expert for Sustainable Supply Chain Management at BMW. Hi, Claudia. Thank you so much for being here. Also with us is Robert May-Nichols. Robert, I don't know if you can switch on your camera, Executive Vice President of the Chilean mining company ENAMI, Empresa Nacional de Minería. We have also with us Jorge Cantallops, Director of Studies and Public Policy. Hi, Robert. Great that it works. We also have with us Jorge, Director of Studies and Public Policy at Cochilco, the Chilean Copper Commission, and back with us, Stefan de Bruyn from SQM. Stefan, I hope that we managed to see and hear you now just fine.
I hope so too.
Okay, we already hear you. That's the most important thing. And now I already see you. Okay, so thanks again for taking part in this discussion. We saw presentations now about sustainability standards, but then also interesting pitches, so to speak, of technological tools that are being developed by startups in Germany and Chile to make the communication of sustainable practice possible. And also we heard SQM, Stefan can elaborate on that a little bit more in the Q&A, who also is in the midst of a voluntary initiative to be more transparent in certain sustainability performance indicators. But of course now I think one point that is very interesting to all of us is to ask Claudia from BMW, who is representing a downstream stakeholder of the mineral supply chains, how at BMW you're preparing for all of these new requirements and how you handle the big task of being in touch with all the other actors of your supply chain, and what role technology tools play also in that context. If you could maybe share a little bit of insights on that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Annika, for the question. And I should also say thank you to Patricio, who already covered many of the sustainability projects that we are conducting at BMW. And let me say that sustainability, or we have a long history of sustainability at BMW. For us, it all started when we were preparing the launch of the BMW i3. So already in 2008, we included sustainability requirements into our tendering process. So we started with a sustainability questionnaire that we really included before nominating any supplier for a component of the i3. And this was then rolled out to all our parts that we are purchasing since 2014. And we're working here much on standardization, for example, in cooperation with initiatives such as Drive Sustainability, that basically took our sustainability questionnaire and made it an industry.
Robert, sorry, I think you're not unmuted. So we don't worry.
Sorry, I didn't see it. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Okay, I'll just continue. No worries. So yeah, it means we're working on standardization so that it's not just one company asking for a certain level of information, but that we can harmonize this over the industry. And that's actually the same approach that we're choosing towards raw materials. So here we already also have a long history of being active in sustainability initiatives. We were a founding member of the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative, for example, and joined that initiative since 2012. We have been on the board there for several years and then continued with Responsible Steel. And since this year, we are a member of the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, IRMA, as we had heard before, because this initiative for us really has the most holistic approach towards sustainability at the mining level. So really taking into consideration social and environmental aspects and also governance issues. Basically, the key topics for us, if we're looking at tenders, especially for raw materials. But let me say here also that BMW is purchasing very few raw materials directly, but it's mostly parts that we are purchasing. So for those raw materials that we do purchase directly, since this year, the contracts we have included IRMA certification as a requirement. But as IRMA is a fairly new initiative, of course, the first audits are just ramping up and taking place. Mm-hmm. And we're hoping, to push more for this specific standard, as it really is the most comprehensive one for the mining industry. And we're very happy that Daimler today announced that they also join IRMA. So more companies demanding for this really rigorous standard, this very robust standard that was also contributed to largely by civil society organizations, also mining affected communities. So to really share requirements towards responsible mining. Let me pause here. Are there any specific other questions? Looking at technology, as this was a topic for today as well, we have started pilot projects on part chain, so tracing parts with blockchain technology. We have been working with chemical tracing of raw minerals. But let me say that for BMW, I think we haven't found the perfect solution yet. So we have a lot of transparency already in several supply chains, but this was mostly really manual work that we did together with our first-tier suppliers. So really tracing one tier by tier in workshops with our supply chains for several raw materials. We do have transparency for the battery raw materials, for copper, for a specific pilot project that we conducted here. But I think the legislation that is coming up in Germany on supply chain transparency really is a great help for us, because it legally binds companies to provide more transparency here. And I think we are very well prepared, as we have been really starting with many pilot projects in this regard, and have a risk-based approach. So for many raw materials, we already have some transparency, but of course it's very complex mineral value chains, sometimes more than 100 players just in one supply chain. I wouldn't even call it a chain anymore. So it's definitely a task that will keep us busy over the next years, and technology can surely play a vital role here.
Perfect. Thank you much for sharing. It definitely is easily visible how complex this task is. How do you see the position that maybe suppliers from Chile could have in that context for BMW? I mean, we all saw in the news the cooperation you had, for example, with Codelco. Patricio also showed it again in the presentation. What's your thought on that? And do you see opportunities also for the Indian region in this topic?
Yeah, well, let me say the cooperation with Codelco was intended to found some kind of responsible copper initiative. It actually well ended in the foundation of the copper mark that was more driven than by the International Copper Association, where we couldn't contribute as much as we had wanted, and therefore in the end did not or could not join simply because it was really driven by the copper industry. But at least we established great links. We had a great start of the project together with Codelco and had an in-depth look at raw materials from this area. So certification through the copper mark, I think, is the first step. As I said, we are working more with IRMA, and there were already the first announcements of Chilean companies that are or that committed to undergo the IRMA audit as well. I think this is really the greatest opportunity because this really shows leadership, and a clear step towards transparency in this sector, and that's something that we really greatly value, absolutely support, and we have been in contact with many of our Chilean suppliers, not direct suppliers, but partners of the value chain. And we are very excited that they agreed to undergo the IRMA audit.
Perfect. Very nice to hear that those positive news. Claudia, I know that you have a follow-up meeting at 5, so please feel free to just exit the panel due to your time issues. We're very glad that we could hear your voice and your insight on the topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Maybe perfect. Stefan, I will switch over to you now, as we unfortunately, due to technological problems, had to cut off your presentation. You were just about to present us the transparency portal, which is a new initiative of SQM to also communicate proactively about your sustainability performance. Maybe you can just, in a nutshell, tell us again what it's about and what your main incentive was to put it into place.
Yeah. So apologies for the technical disruption, first of all. But so the concept of the portal is to provide transparency to the whole value chain. So we were anyway already reporting. Can you hear me? Okay, we were anyway already reporting this information to all the relevant government authorities, but Corfo had asked us to also make it available to the local communities, as they are, of course, a very important stakeholder. But we actually voluntarily decided to make it available publicly to all stakeholders, given that the automotive battery value chain has many stakeholders and there is many people interested. So we really wanted to provide a portal to provide transparency. And this, of course, fits within our philosophy on sustainability and our sustainable development plan, because there's no point to have any plan if you cannot communicate it transparently and let it be subjected to scrutiny of all stakeholders in your value chain. So that's what we decided to do, and that's what we did. And we have received nothing but positive feedback so far, so it's really very positive result.
Thank you so much. We will definitely upload the information about how everyone can access the portal to just get a first-hand view on it as well. Robert, ENAMI has a special role in the Chilean mining sector, and I think, if I'm informed correctly, the whole functioning model of ENAMI is quite unique globally, because you basically give access to the small and medium-sized mining companies to the world market by processing their ores. But for me, it makes me think that this makes it even more complicated to trace certain indicators. How does ENAMI go about that? Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more? Or tell us a little bit more, maybe also explaining what how ENAMI works for those ENAMI.
Hi, thank you, Annika. It's interesting. It's not more complicated. It is less complicated because because the system that ENAMI has been developing for the last almost 95 years, because it started in Chile. This ENAMI system started in Chile in 1925 with an organization named CACREMI, Caja de Crédito Minero. It's like a bank for the small miners, and we give them credits and other things since 1925. After that, in 1950.
I think we just lost a little bit the connection. Can you hear Robert or? We just lost you for
now
a minute,
you hear me? Yeah.
Now we can hear you again.
Okay.
If it maybe it's a good idea to if there are continuous problems, then we can try switching off the video. But let's give it another shot now. We lost him again. Maybe I can continue with you. How? Okay. Robert, I think maybe you can switch off your video, and in the meanwhile, I will ask Jorge a question, then we'll come back to you if you don't mind.
Perfect.
Okay.
No problem. No problem.
Perfect. Jorge, you're from the Chilean Copper Commission, so you're an institutional actor.
Yep.
The Chilean government, the Ministry of Mining, about topics and trends that are coming up. How do you think that this growing demand for information on responsible practices in the mineral supply chains is shaping the mining sector in Chile, and maybe if you also have information on that, the other Andean countries?
Yeah, thanks, Annika. I know my connection probably is not so fast now. We have some problems, so I will get the camera off.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, just to reduce the risk. It's really interesting. I was hearing all the presentation are very interesting, but we have a very concern. We're really the government of Chile and the mining activity in Chile is really engagement with the sustainability. But the problem is what happened with the standards, because we identified around 50 different documents that impacted the extractive industry, with recommendation, standard principles, certification, norms, and the stakeholders' goals are different. Our NGO, final consumer, OECD, London Metal Exchange, even consultancies, European Union, Commission, and others. And all of them has different approaches, so it's different. It's not easy to define what is the best way to communicate. And because we must to add other player, that is the government. Because I want to say that I believe that an active role of the government of the mining countries is very important, because the risk of lack of coordination could affect the local producers. Probably Robert could provide more information about, but because the illegal mining is a permanent threat. Probably not in Chile, but it's a problem in the region. And we don't must to forget that the mining activity plays an economic role, but a social role in our countries also. So we think it's very important to keep working for a common and ideally unique standards to producers and consumers. And probably this standard must be supported, promoted, and if it's necessary, financed by the government, because it's necessary to support to this standard could be allowed by every producers, because I think that there are some risk if we are not able to reach all of them, and to reach these standards, or this common goal could be a very good opportunity for the mining producers, but also for the technological providers also. But I think that we must to add, consider this concern about the diversification of the standards, or the lot of standards. We think that it's very important to keep working in less, ideally unique standards or certifications.
Perfect. Very interesting point. Also, I think very interesting your point that complements what Gudrun said in her presentation, that the quality of the information is really important when looking at any standards. So in that case, we could also maybe come back to Enami and ask what Enami's role really is in ensuring that sustainable management in the smaller scale extractive sector. I hope that we can hear Robert now a little bit better. I see that you also switched off your camera. Maybe hoping that the connection will be better by then. Robert, can you hear us? I think maybe he's trying to connect again, because I don't see him as a panelist at the moment. I don't know, Denise, if you can verify if Robert is still in here.
I cannot see him. I think he's not connected.
Okay, so then I try again. I don't see anyone connected with the video right now, but I'm hoping that Stefan, you are still there.
I can try to be brave and try voice and video, Annika.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, I mean, we already heard that SQM has made a clear commitment to communicate, and you told us about the incentives. Are there other benefits that you can gather out of maybe collecting more data and having more information at hand? Maybe benefits that help you to improve your own processes? Maybe you can also share a little bit on that question that goes in the same direction that we had before. Is it more of a burden or a benefit for you as a company that those requirements are increasing?
No, as I mentioned, we have received nothing but positive feedback. So this actually we didn't know, but this is quite an innovative concept. There's not many companies that are doing what we are doing. So basically on the platform, you can drill down on the map, and then you select the monitoring point, and you can get the historic values back at least 40 years, and in some cases 25 years of data. So full transparency. And the idea is, of course, to let people evaluate and investigate for themselves. And of course, it's also a platform which we hope to receive feedback, and it can become an interactive process, because the more you share with stakeholders, the more you become aware of what those shareholders expect from you and what they want. So I think for us, it's an important driver for the company. And I think it also, you know, it links also to the fact and the history that we have with our sustainability report since more than 10 years, according to the GRI. All the information is there, so it's inviting the stakeholders to have a look, and then we want to be very transparent, very proactive, and see where we can improve. But I think the biggest benefit for me as an engagement responsible is that it really allows you to explain how the Salar de Atacama works, because it's a combination of geology, hydrogeology, chemistry, hydrology, weather. And so it allows to explain, and it allows for people to see tangibly, okay, so that's the amount of brine that has been extracted. This is the variations of the fresh water. This is the variations of the marginal wedge in between both systems, and you can see that there is almost no variation in the marginal zone. So it's a seasonal variation of 6 centimeters, while in the up to a couple of meters. So people can really see that the extraction of the brine on the and it depends on the fresh design one step further away from the nucleus. And I think that is the main benefit for us. And of course, we're open to provide more background to anybody that is interested.
Yeah, it surely helps to be transparent on information, to make mining also more explainable, which is it's a sector that you have to really dive into in order to understand all the factors. And I think it's a very good point that just as more transparency makes it easier just to explain it also with the necessary detail. Jorge, I think you are still there. At least I see your microphone. Maybe just to because now we lost Robert. As Cocheco, do you feel that that there is already a big tendency amongst the mining companies to go in the same proactive direction, like for example SQM? Or do you still see important bottlenecks, or and also maybe do you think that the whole COVID scenario at the moment makes it a little bit less priority for companies because they are just trying to navigate through these troubled times? What's your impression? How is the sector doing on the communication side?
Well, I started saying that in our opinion, the Chilean companies in general have improved a lot the sustainability in the process, increasing the use of renewables, increase the reuse of water, and reduce significantly the carbon gas emission in the last 10 or 20 years. Probably there are a lot of challenges, or not probably, there are a lot of challenges and problems. And also opportunities, for instance, circular economy increase or mineral treatment, reducing the use or emission. But it's also very important to understand that the mining activity has a long-term vision. For Chuquicamata open pit has operating basically the same mine site for almost 100 years. So this is a very important characteristic. So because probably there are a lot of opportunities in the process to reduce, increase sustainability, increase traceability, but probably the main opportunity is in the design of the new projects. Okay, I think this is a very key point that is very considered for the providers. Other characteristic from mining activity is the cycle of the prices, because you understand that the mining activity has always faced cycles in the price. Is better because the resources to innovation, to resources to are also cyclical. So it's very important to understand what are the nature of the mining activity, especially the mining activity for the traditional. Probably SQM is different because there are no strip ratio, there are no, well, there are, but pre-stripping or other process typical from metallurgical and even in copper. Our goal is different than iron ore. So understand the characteristic of each mining activity is very important. I repeat, there are opportunities, but the major opportunity to reduce is in the design of the new projects.
Perfect. Very, very interesting. I mean, I think definitely this discussion we had today, we do have to continue it because we see that it's very dynamic. We've also heard from Claudia from BMW that that they are continuously dynamic processes going on, and also in Germany. We also heard it from Sustainable and in Chile. But I think it also was clear that that Germany and Chilean actors definitely share the same vision, which I think is a positive point. So I really think that we should continue with those kind of dialogues, and that's maybe one perfect or one good outcome of the whole crisis pandemic at the moment, that these virtual formats are more accepted, and it's easier maybe to talk, although we also had a little bit of technological challenges today.
Annika,
yes?
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to advise that Robert was back. No, now he disappeared again. So no, I didn't say anything. He was back for a second, but no, I just go on.
Yeah, it's a shame. Also, I think we are already a little bit over time. So unfortunately, I think we have to stop here and agree to meet again. So hoping that then the technological settings will be a little bit more to our favor. Thank you very much, Stefan, Jorge, and also Robert for participating. Also to Claudia. I think it was a great panel, very interesting opinions. And now I would just like to hand over to Achim Konstantin from BGR for the final remarks, because it's not only the end of this webinar, but also of the series that we have that GIZ, BGR, and many other partners have been executing over the last month. So Achim, please go ahead for the final remarks.
Thank you very much, Annika. Yeah, I think we'll switch to Spanish because I see that the majority of our attendees comes from South America, so y ahora continúo en español. Un reto para los traductores. Bueno, ya muchas gracias por el gran honor de darles algunos comentarios finales sobre este webinario, el cual ha sido, como ya mencionaste, el último de una serie de webinarios que hemos desarrollado en los últimos 2 meses más o menos, sobre el tema de cadenas de suministro minerales en el contexto post-COVID, ¿no? Bueno, en este contexto también quisiera aprovechar la oportunidad para darles también un breve resumen de los webinarios pasados, y si no han tenido la oportunidad de asistir en los otros eventos y si quieren saber más de lo que hemos discutido, pueden acceder a todos los webinarios en cualquier momento a través de nuestra página web www.minsus.net. Hemos grabado todos los seminarios y los hemos puesto en línea para su disponibilidad. Bueno, en el primer seminario discutimos, entre otras cosas, la forma en que los paquetes de estímulo internacional, en particular en Europa, que se han promulgado ahora en el marco del contexto COVID, podrían impulsar una transformación de la economía hacia prácticas más, digamos, verdes o más sostenibles, con las correspondientes repercusiones en el suministro de materias primas. Porque, como subrayaron en repetidas ocasiones diferentes participantes durante el seminario, la transformación del suministro de energía y del transporte hacia tecnologías neutras para el clima requiere el uso de materias primas minerales como el cobre, el níquel, el litio y el cobalto, y esta demanda de materias primas no puede lograrse únicamente mediante el reciclaje de materiales, sino que sigue requiriendo la extracción primaria de estos minerales, por lo menos a mediano plazo. Y los países andinos son ya importantes proveedores de muchos de esos minerales a nivel global. Así, por ejemplo, alrededor del 40% del cobre extraído en todo el mundo actualmente proviene de Chile y Perú. Y también esos países disponen de los recursos geológicos para la minería del futuro. Y como destacaron muchos ponentes, el gran desafío actual es hacer que la extracción de estas materias primas sea lo más responsable y sostenible posible y que contribuya a lo largo plazo al desarrollo de estos países. Y en el primer webinario me sorprendió personalmente de manera positiva que también los inversores internacionales exijan ahora más y más a sus clientes una producción más responsable de los minerales, ya que se consideran demasiado altos los riesgos financieros y de reputación en caso de daños ambientales o conflictos sociales por proyectos mineros. Y como ha demostrado Hugo Brody en su presentación de los requisitos para el suministro responsable, en inglés responsible sourcing, de la Bolsa de Metales en Londres, que al fin y al cabo es la bolsa de metales más importante del mundo, también se ha convertido en una, digamos, importante fuerza de impulso en esta dirección. Y en el segundo webinario nos centramos en la forma en que la minería en los países andinos puede contribuir a la recuperación económica después de la pandemia. Y entre otros hemos invitado a los viceministros de minería de Colombia y Perú. Y en el debate quedó muy claro que la minería es un importante motor económico en estos países y que también desempeña un papel muy importante en la recuperación posterior a la pandemia, pero también durante esta. Pero también quedó muy claro que la industria minera de mañana debe desarrollarse de una forma más ecológica, más social, más tecnificada para poder sobrevivir en el futuro. Y en el tercer seminario se debatió, entre otros, la influencia de la digitalización y la automatización en la minería, con todas sus oportunidades y desafíos, como el aumento de la demanda de trabajadores altamente calificados y la reducción de la necesidad de mano de obra, que hasta ahora ha proporcionado en muchos casos empleo y prosperidad local en las regiones más remotas de las minas. Y hoy, en el último webinario, hemos visto diferentes prácticas responsables en cadenas de suministro de minerales y su comunicación hacia las comunidades. Por un lado, hemos visto cómo han desarrollado los estándares internacionales de sustentabilidad con sus diferentes enfoques y finalidades. Y por otro lado, hemos visto ejemplos de soluciones tecnológicas para hacer las buenas prácticas visibles y transparentes. Tanto hoy y como en los últimos webinarios se ha hecho evidente que las exigencias a la industria minera han aumentado desde varios puntos de vista y ya no son solamente las comunidades locales alrededor de las minas que piden normas ambientales y sociales más elevadas, sino también son los inversores internacionales, los clientes como BMW, que estuvo presente, y otros, o los usuarios finales que exigen estándares cada vez más altos. Y los reglamentos internacionales como de la OCDE, de las Naciones Unidas, sobre las debidas diligencias, los reglamentos internacionales y nacionales o regionales como de la Unión Europea, que Gudrun ha presentado hoy brevemente, las numerosas iniciativas de sostenibilidad que también de la industria que hemos visto hoy, también como IRMA, COPAMAC, ICMM, entre otros, demuestran que aquí se ha puesto algo en marcha y el pulso del tiempo exige un manejo más responsable y sostenible y de las materias primas a lo largo de toda la cadena de suministro, ¿no? Entonces, desde la mina en el Perú hasta el automóvil o la turbina eólica fabricada en Alemania, para citar un ejemplo. Y tal vez el rumbo parezca claro, sin embargo, las numerosas contribuciones de hoy y de los seminarios anteriores han demostrado que el camino hacia esta meta aún no se ha completado y que se necesitarán muchas ideas nuevas, innovación, coraje y compromiso de diferentes actores hasta que tengamos la minería responsable y sostenible que muchos panelistas en los webinarios han presentado como su objetivo. Y bueno, con ese espíritu quisiera agradecer una vez más a todos los participantes de nuestra serie de seminarios, especialmente también a los ponentes y panelistas de hoy. Además, quiero agradecer a todas las instituciones y personas que ayudaron a organizar esta serie de webinarios, como a los colegas de la GIZ de MINSUS, nuestras contrapartes en la CEPAL, CESCO, las cámaras de comercio alemanas en los países andinos, especialmente en Chile y Perú, y todos los demás que nos han ayudado a planificar, realizar y difundir los eventos. Y por último, pero no menos importante, me gustaría agradecer a la audiencia por su participación y atención. Hoy nos han acompañado alrededor de 80 personas, a las que quiero expresar mi especial agradecimiento. Y si disfrutaron este evento, manténganse al día con nuestras actividades a través de nuestra página web o nuestro canal de LinkedIn. Y estaríamos encantados de volver a darles la bienvenida en otra oportunidad. Y con eso me gustaría despedirme de ustedes y darles cierre a este webinar. Y que tengan un buen día y manténganse sanos. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Achim, por tus palabras. También, sí, no me queda nada que añadir, solamente agradecer a ti, a todos los participantes, los panelistas y al público también por su paciencia con los problemitas técnicos que se nos presentaron durante esta jornada. Y sí, y nos vemos todos en una próxima ocasión para llevar todos adelante una minería más sustentable. Muchas gracias y que estén todos muy bien.